All right. What would you say your favorite memory of George would be?
George Harrison?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a favorite memory will be is spending a lot of time in London with him, and also when he recorded My Sweet Lord, and he sang the song to me before he recorded it. And that was the time I told him that the song is familiar. And he says, no, he says, this is my lyrics and all that. And wind up was later on, because he got sued, and it was he so fine by the chiffons.
Mm. What kind of man was George?
George was a great guy. I mean, we worked together a lot. Besides, John Lennon, and I worked with and Ringo and Paul McCartney. We worked very heavy with concert for Bangladesh, and George was like a perfectionist. He always wanted everything to be great, and he was very concerned everything he did.
How was he spiritually? I mean, really, was he?
He was
really
very spiritual. He was very spiritual. He was so spiritual that he bought a big home in London. That was actually it was a monk mansion.
For the Hare Krishnas, right?
They were Hare Krishnas, and I spent time there. Spent time there when there was all spider webs all over in the house.
Mm. Were you there when he was purchasing it?
Yeah, I was there when he purchased it.
How did you feel when he died? When you found out and everything?
Well, I knew he was dying. He had cancer and all that. So I felt, of course, I was praying for him to remission, whatever, and it didn't happen. But I felt bad, Same way the way I felt John when he got shot.
How do you rate George's contribution to the Beatles?
Very heavy, a lot. George was very talented. George was a good songwriter too. That was not acknowledged that much.
Mm.
And the only acknowledgments there was Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Those songs. I mean, George wrote even that song "Something in the Wind," which is a great sand that's played all over the world, and every artist did record that.
And can you tell me about how it is working with him?
Working with him was great. I mean, there was he never gave me a problem, and he used to listen when I used to tell him about promotion and all that, and we got along together, and he was very nice working with him.
Was he a funny guy? A lot of people said he's witty.
Well, George wasn't that funny. George was very serious. Okay, and of course, we used to talk about a lot of things. We used to laugh together a lot, but George was not a laughable guy, no, at all.
Mm. All right. Do you really consider him the quiet Beatle, like most people say?
Yes, he is a quiet Beatle. George is very quiet. George was quiet, but in public and also privately.
Have you been to his home in Fire Park?
Yes, I've been to the home. I just said that before.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh yeah, up there. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. How did John and George react? Like, what was their relationship together?
There was good relationship, but I don't think there was heavy contact together.
Mm.
Of course, John liked George, and George liked John. George respected John. Always calls him, as a leader of the group.
Mm. All right. Could you tell us like a little story about you and George, just a little tiny thing?
Well, George, a great story with George is, was one day he was in the office with me, and when he came to New York, or a lot of times I always picked him up at the airport, or I meet him in London, or spend time with him in London, in California, whatever. And especially there was times one day in the office, we were talking, and Bette Miller came in, and he says, "What's that?" And she wanted to be signed to the label. He says, "I don't know." He took one look at her, and he started to laugh a little bit. He put his head down, He says, "I don't think we should have this one." But the next day, I got a call from Elvis Presley. He called me up in the office, and when Elvis called me in the office, George was sitting right opposite my desk, and Elvis says, "Make sure you're coming down to the concert at Madison Square Garden." "I am." I says, "Guess who's in the office with me? George Harrison." "Great, tell him to come down too." So George was pointing to me and to himself and say, So I took George to Madison Square Garden backstage to see Elvis Presley.
All right. Have you been in the studio and seen George record?
Yes, many times.
Many times.
I was there when he did All Things Must Pass.
And were you there around when they were recording like Sgt. Pepper and everything?
Yeah, I was there too.
Okay. What was Brian Jones like?
Brian was a great talent. I got a big kick out of Brian. I had a good rapport with Brian. Brian was himself. I mean, Brian was the type of human being you couldn't tell him what to do. The Stones never control. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Charlie Watson, Bill Wyman could never control Brian.
So he didn't really get along with him, or were they friendly or anything?
Well, they were friendly, but they didn't associate with each other.
Mm.
And Brian was the type of guy, used to, go out of his mind a lot, playing guitar, But I like Brian. Brian was a great talent.
How did you come to work for the Beatles?
Through the Rolling Stones. And what happened was Brian Epstein, committed suicide, whatever. And then when he died, the Beatles came to me because they wanted the same promoter promoted the Stones.
And what kind of man was Elvis? Like, tell us about working with him and like being a friend of his and everything.
Well, Elvis was a great guy. I broke his first big record after the movies, Suspicious Mind. And Elvis was one of the gentlemen at all times. Unfortunately, later on, he just got onto certain drugs and this and that. But he was a great guy. Whenever you introduce someone to Elvis, his acquaintance with somebody, whatever, meeting somebody, they always call you sir. And if you leave, he says, it was a pleasure meeting you, sir. And if you said something or question or you talk, yes, sir, and no, sir.
Like he was in the army.
That's right, he was in the army.
Yeah. Would you ever go to Bangkok for a Beatles convention?
Huh?
Would you ever go to Bangkok for a Beatles convention?
Would I ever go to Bangkok?
Bangkok, yeah, for a convention.
Well, I like Bangkok. I think Bangkok's a nice area. I've been in Asia. I did the Olympics in South Korea in 1988, 2-hour TV special. Yeah, I would go to Bangkok for a Beatles convention if I was approached.
Mm. Are you aware that like John went there by himself? Or?
At the Bangkok?
To Bangkok?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah, of course. Tell me about the crazy days in LA with John.
Well, John was a type of a guy, in the spare morning, he used to like to go out at nights, meeting people and all that, and partying. He liked that. He liked to kibiss a lot, like to laugh and kibiss and talk about some other people, whatever, and the different occasions, he liked to take walks and just talk about music.
Do you think in the end Yoko was good for him, or was it like a troubled relationship near the end?
No, it wasn't a trouble towards the end. No, it couldn't be. They had a child. They had Sean, their baby. It was a trouble, and Yoko was good for him.
Okay. What is your favorite John story personally?
Well, my favorite John story, of course, one of the stories is when I told him we should put out this record, Imagine. He wrote it and I said, let's make it, I could make this a hit. Let's put it out a week later. And he says, no problem, let's do it, And then another story, of course, Canada and Toronto, when we came here with the Peace Festival in 1969 at the Varsity Stadium. And we had a lot of fun on stage.
I'm sorry.
We had a lot of
1 second. Could you start that over again? What you were saying about coming in Toronto?
Well, Toronto came here with John. I took John and Yoko here. We did the Live Peace Festival at Varsity Stadium. And the funny thing was when Yoko was singing, and of course she had a sheet. She went into the sheet when she's singing, and John was laughing his head off. And then when Yoko got out of the sheet, John put a serious face on, like nothing happened. And Yoko saw him laughing at him.
Tell us about working with the Beatles at Apple before their breakup.
Well, it was a tough situation because, they were lost.
you.